Tropical storm likely to form in the Caribbean out of 15L. So, a potential tropical cyclone in the Atlantic, south of Jamaica at this point. Potential tropical cyclone 15L, located at 16 north, 76.6 degrees west, moving pretty much due westwards at around 12 miles per hour. As of 9 a.m. In Kingston in Jamaica, it currently has winds of 40 miles per hour and a pressure of 1003 millibars, moving, as I said, due west at 12 miles per hour. It's not yet a tropical cyclone. The recon planes are investigating the system right now. Convection isn't really over the center, and perhaps that's the main reason why it's not yet a cyclone. Here it is right now, 9 a.m. EST, currently located here with a wind field out towards 100 nautical miles in the northern two quadrants. And a tropical storm watch is in effect for Jamaica and Grand Cayman. It is currently 226 kilometers from Kingston, 309 from Montego Bay, 605 from Grand Cayman, 772 from Credel Impera in Honduras, and 1247 from Belize City, which we believe will be the eventual, well, not far from the eventual landfall location. We expect it to be somewhere in Belize. So this storm has the potential to become a hurricane, and that's currently what's forecasted by the National Hurricane Center. They're expecting 80 mile per hour winds, but the primary hazard at the moment is high rain rates, which could cause flash flooding in Jamaica and Belize. It's not always the amount of rain that falls, sometimes it can be the rate of which that rain can fall. And on the northern side, if we get some significant convection, we could see that potential rise. Storm totals of 6 inches are possible in both of these areas, with lesser amounts in neighbouring countries up to 150 millimeters. Here's the forecast then as we go through the rest of Monday and into the rest of the week. This is based on the GFS output, taking it on a slight curve northwards and then dipping back southwestwards into the southern part of Belize and then back inland over the southern Yucatan Peninsula and over central Mexico, where it's expected to dissipate towards the end of the week. So it's not going to be a very long-lived storm, and this is the NHC forecast as well, showing something quite similar, and the spread of estimates right now looking pretty decent for 40 miles per hour. ASCAT a little bit lower than that, with the other satellite methods going with the 40 as well as the National Hurricane Center. I haven't seen the data, but I assume Recon must support that as well. The forecast there, you can see the NHC take it much further to the southwest later on in that forecast cone there by the time we get to Friday, and maybe an inkling that it could end up in the eastern Pacific. There's the wind speed probabilities, and you can see already that it's well above half chance for Belize and inland over parts of Guatemala and for the very southern part of the Yucatan part of Mexico. So those chances are rising, and Jamaica there just hovering around 30% chance of tropical storm force winds along your south coast. And this is the forecast from the GFS model once again, taking a look at that storm moving northwards a little bit, passing just south of Belize City, moving inland. GFS interestingly only peaking it as a moderate tropical storm at best. Earlier model runs suggested that it might have been stronger, but models have not been very good at picking up on this system so far, so it's going to be a toss-up really to see what happens. I mean, it still isn't particularly well organised, and so the models are still having a bit of a hard time resolving it. But we know what the Caribbean Sea can be like at this time of year. It can spring up surprises, especially when it enters that very hotbed area in the western Caribbean. There it is again on simulated radar reflectivity, and you can see it dies off quite quickly once it moves inland, but you still see some of those red zones, and those are the areas that you see for potential heavy rain rates. If you get under a red zone there, then your potential for flash flooding is much increased, particularly around the Belize landfall there and moving inland even over to parts of Guatemala. Interesting, but not particularly accurate. We just have to see what happens as time goes by in terms of that rainfall. But this is the estimated rainfall totals chart as we watch the storm plow into the Yucatan there. You can see those colors getting towards the yellows. That's pushing 6 or 7 inches of rain there, 150 millimeters, maybe a little bit higher, getting into the oranges just off the coast. So if that was to move inland just a little bit further, then it would get much higher in terms of those rainfall estimates. Jamaica honestly doesn't look too bad. Looks like you might get maybe 3 inches according to this model run, but of course the NHC expecting that it could be a bit higher. Inland over parts of Central America, we're looking at high amounts of maybe 3 or 4 inches up to 100 millimeters. Sea surface temperatures are looking decent right now, pushing 29 degrees Celsius, dropping slightly to 28 as it moves off the northern coast of Honduras, and then by the time it gets towards landfall it might fall actually to 27 as it strikes Belize, but those temperatures aren't really a worry for this potential storm developing. Still very warm for this cyclone. So it's likely to have a fairly impressive run as it continues westwards. I think time will be against it as it goes on here, because we're only looking at landfall in about 3 days and it hasn't really got going yet. Let's check some of the satellite imagery once again, and you may have seen that we marked out the center earlier on, and there it is again. So that's where the center would appear to be, at least the center of all that rotation, and you can quite clearly see that the convection is quite far away from all of that, and certainly that would be a reason for me to hold off calling it a tropical cyclone. I'm not sure if that's the same reason the National Hurricane Center has, but it's certainly got the rotation. So I would say that's a center of circulation there, but we just need to start seeing some of that convection start to launch itself over or nearer the center of this cyclone, and there is a little flare up there on the northern side just in those last few frames. So a little bit more of that, and that might convince the National Hurricane Center to pull the trigger and call this a tropical storm, because it does also have tropical storm force winds according to our spread of analysis methods. And looking at the wide shot of it, we zoom out there, you can see the system's not particularly large, its influence isn't very widespread. In fact, I don't think many land areas will be feeling this system right now. Just a little bit of cloud off the eastern periphery of Jamaica, but really we're not looking at too much going on over land areas right now. Of course, that tropical storm watch is in effect. That wind field could expand a little bit as it reaches the coast of Jamaica possibly, and eventually on towards Grand Cayman, but we'll keep monitoring. 15L could get named later today.